What's going on, everybody? I'm Primalliquid, and I have here 5 upcoming JRPG games that I absolutely 100% think you should play in 2023. Now, chances are, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know we are all about good JRPGs around here, and so we are going to kick this list off in the release date order, okay? We're not going to do, you know, what I think you should play the most or anything like that. We are going to do this in release date order, just so, who knows, you might be able to play a game pretty soon. But with that said, let's talk about 5 upcoming JRPGs which are going to be an absolute blast this year. And we're going to start this list off with Atelier Ryza 3. Now, Atelier is a series that has been going on forever, basically. It is a JRPG with both a good story element, a very in-depth synthesis function, and the gameplay follows traditional turn-based RPG elements most of the time. But just in terms of the Holy Trinity, you know, it's all there. One of the best things about Atelier, though, is the synthesis, in my opinion. The synthesis is really involved, and you can either spend, you know, just 5 minutes doing it for what you need for the story, or you can spend 50 hours and really go in depth on it. It is an incredibly balanced system in that it's super easy to use for beginners, but then it's also, you know, it has the complexities that a more advanced player can actually take advantage of. The gameplay is just traditional, go whack things on a head. You can use different items that you can create, you can use weapon skills, you can use character skills, and so on and so forth. Now, the good news about Ryza is that Atelier Ryza 1 and Atelier Ryza 2 were probably the best entry points for beginners to the Atelier franchise. The synthesis system was simplified, the battles were simplified, there's a lot of quality of life changes involved in the games, and they are a lot more balanced compared to something like the Mysterious series, where people might struggle getting into the synthesis. Now, Atelier Ryza 3 is releasing on March 24th. We've already seen from trailers that it does follow the same sort of synthesis style as Ryza 1 and Ryza 2, which leads me to believe this is also going to be a really good entry point for beginners as well. One of the keynotes as well, however, is Atelier, you can basically just jump into any game, okay? Now, while some of them are in the same world, basically, the stories are oftentimes disconnected. So what I mean by that is, let's look at Atelier Ryza 1 and Atelier Ryza 2. So basically, Atelier Ryza 1 introduces you to all the characters, okay? It has its own key storyline and all that, but then you have Atelier Ryza 2. Now, this also has some of the same characters from Atelier Ryza 1. It does also introduce some new characters, but it has the original characters. Now, you are going to miss out on the character's original storyline, you know, their introduction, if you didn't play Ryza 1. However, the overall story of Ryza 2 is completely separate to Ryza 1, and so you can actually enjoy Ryza 2 without playing the first game. And this is something that Atelier does quite often. If you don't know, the Atelier series basically has 3, sometimes now 4, games in a traditional story world. So, for example, Atelier Ryza is known as the secret storyline, okay? You have Atelier Sophie, which is part of the Mysterious saga that has 4 titles in it now. You've also got the Arlen saga and so on and so forth. Each of these different storylines always have in the name Mysterious, Secret, Arlen, and so on and so forth, and that way you can tell which it is part, like which storyline it is part of. But if you want to play Ryza 3, you don't have to play Ryza 1 or Ryza 2 or anything like that for the storyline. The only thing is, you will just sort of miss out on the character's background. Now, sometimes they will explain parts of that, they will explain some meetings, but you won't get the in-depth meeting, okay? So if you want the full experience, go play Ryza 1 and 2. But don't worry, you don't have to do that to understand Ryza 3, okay? Now, let's move on to the next game, shall we? Okay, so also coming up in March, and this one's going to be a good one. This is one that I've personally been dying for a very long time, okay? It is the Agarest Generations of War Remaster. Now, it's a shame we aren't getting a new title in the series, but this is a game that originally released in Japan in 2007, okay? It did eventually come to Europe in 2009, and then America in 2010. So it's been 12 years since this game originally released in the West, but it is a phenomenal game, okay? You are pretty much guaranteed, okay? You are basically guaranteed 100 hours gameplay from this game. It is a tactical RPG, so think along the lines of Disgaea, Final Fantasy Tactics, you know, that sort of gameplay element. But it was also one of the first JRPGs which did things a little differently. It combines the storytelling prowess of a visual novel with the tactical RPG actual gameplay. Not only that, it has a super in-depth crafting system as well. Not quite as distinct as Atelier, but you are able to craft literally hundreds and hundreds of items, pieces of equipment, and so on and so forth. The post game is absolutely phenomenal as well. You are going to finish the main game around level 100. Post game, you're going to be level 999. It is an incredibly amazing experience for sure. Now, the game itself also has some rather unique features. So there's the breeding feature, and I know that sounds really weird, okay? I know, just hear me out, okay? Hear me out. So what the breeding feature is, basically, you start off with a main character. Okay, you are starting on Generation 1 with your main character. Now, I'm not going to go too in-depth on this because of story reasons, but essentially, there are 5 generations, okay? At the end of Generation 1, you have to choose a wife for the main character, and then Generation 2, you are playing as the son of Generation 1's main character and his wife, okay? Now, this is great for a multiple of reasons. Firstly, Generation 2's main character, okay, his stats, skills, equipment choices, like equipment he can equip and all that, that is based on a few things. Firstly, what wife did you choose in Generation 1? What was the romance value for that wife in Generation 1? So, you know, was she a level 5 romance, level 4 romance? All of this changes your second generation protagonist. Now, this does mean it's a little well, it's not really complicated if you use a guide or anything like that, but if you're going in completely blind, it is going to be difficult to create a perfect character every generation. But as part of true end guides, chances are you're going to end up with a pretty much perfect, you know, hero every generation anyway. But it's a really nice feature that you can create a character however you want. Do you want your main character to use staffs? No worries. Marry the previous, like, character to this girl. Do you want the main character in the next generation to use guns or spears or swords? Marry someone else. It is seriously that simple to actually create a main character however you want. But then you also have the story aspect as well. The story is massive, okay? Absolutely massive. It really does take the whole idea of a visual novel game, and it just sort of adds the normal gameplay on top of that. So the story is truly 10 out of 10 in my opinion. But the best thing is the gameplay. So as I mentioned, it is tactical gameplay. So you are on a grid. Now, it's no traditional style grid, okay? You can change the shape of this grid. And then you also have a combination link. So each character can link up with a bunch of different characters, which can let them share abilities. It can let them increase their stats, their SP, and so on and so forth. There's so many different ways you can use this combination link. It's unreal. And then you can also combine their skills, okay? So let's say you have one character with a skill called Steal. You have another character with a skill called Trick It. If you use both of those characters that are linked together and you use those skills together as well, those skills will combine and both characters will take part in an attack called Snatch. Okay, now you can either do that with 2 characters, or if one character can use both of those skills at the same time, you can do it with just the one character. The combat is insanely detailed for sure, and honestly, this is definitely something that I would 10 out of 10 suggest you pick up if you can. The remaster is releasing on March, and it seems to be for Nintendo Switch. There is not any other console or anything like that announced, but I strongly suggest picking it up. Or you can go and get the normal version on Steam, which comes with all the DLC as well, for I want to say it's like £10 or something like that. Like, it's super cheap, and honestly, you are an idiot for missing out on this game. If you've never even heard of it or anything like that, go get it. It is amazing. One of my top 5 RPG series of all time, okay? It is truly 10 out of 10. I cannot stress that enough. But let's move on to something else, shall we? And this one is going to be a big one. Now, I think we all know what I am about to announce if I say 22nd of June. It is going to be Final Fantasy 16. Why is this in my top 5 games list that you should check out this year? So, I know a lot of people do prefer the whole turn-based combat over real-time. However, I am the same, okay? I am the same. I do prefer turn-based as well. But this one, Final Fantasy 16, does things a little bit differently. So, let's hear me out, okay? So, first of all, the lead director is Yoshi P. Okay, it's Naoki Yoshida. And he has basically, in the last 10 years... took Final Fantasy 14 from being a complete failed project, okay? He took it over when it was already beaten into the ground. Him and his team brought that back and have made it one of the absolute best games ever. Not only that, the story writers for Final Fantasy 16 is the same team that did the Shadowbringers storyline for Final Fantasy 14 as well. Remember that expansion for Final Fantasy 14 that won basically every single story award there is for games? Yeah, it's that team. They are doing the story for Final Fantasy 16. So straight off the bat, we have a lead director that has proved himself and earned everybody's trust over a very long period of time. We have a writing team that we've already seen the work from before, and it is 10 out of 10, an emotional roller coaster that's gonna wreck your self-esteem. Don't be surprised if you cry during this game, okay? And then, for the third and final one, we have a new addition to the team. They hired the lead combat director for the Devil May Cry series. So what this means is, Final Fantasy 16 gameplay is probably going to play a lot like Devil May Cry. They hired the combat director for those games to come and do the combat for 16. What does that mean? It's not going to be as jank as 15, for one. Like, gameplay in FF15 was a little all over the place. I know it was their first, true attempt at real time. But it was, in my opinion, very, very jank. It was just warp strike, gameplay done. Then obviously there was Nomura's take with 7 Remake, which was, kind of real-time, kind of ATB. And the two systems just did not work together, like, at all, in my opinion. However, with Devil May Cry, the gameplay is smooth. The fights are smooth. You can chain hundreds of different combinations together. You can juggle enemies, no problem. And it's got that very satisfying feel to it. So for me, to bring that into FF16, if they are going to do real-time combat, I do think Devil May Cry style is the way, honestly. Now, personally, I wouldn't mind something along the lines of Crisis Core gameplay, but it is what it is. Devil May Cry is still an excellent game. And so to have the lead director who's proved themselves, a story team that have proved themselves, and then a combat director designing the actual combat gameplay that has also proved himself across tons and tons of games. That is 3 things right there, which in my opinion is going to make this game really stand out. So I am looking forward to it. And let me just be clear, I've not looked forward to a Final Fantasy in quite a while, It's like Final Fantasy 15 was a letdown, 13, a little bit of a letdown. Like, I'm okay with 13, I'm not super into it, but I'm okay with it. Then you got like 13-2, again, it's okay, story was kind of meh though. And then you got Lightning Returns, which, I mean, I played the Japanese version, I got the Platinum Trophy, and I never played it again. Don't you just love that annoying little addition from Amazon? You know, that voice assistant that if you say its name, it's gonna light up like a goddamn blue moon. Always interrupting. Anyway, but yeah, that is Final Fantasy 16, 22nd of June. I am excited for it, which is definitely very rare for me in a Final Fantasy game. But hey, you know, are you looking forward to it? Are you not looking forward to it? Are you optimistic? You know, that's a big one. Are you optimistic in it? And then we move on to something that I think not a lot of you would have heard of, to be honest. I really don't think a lot of you would have heard of this. But there is a game releasing on the 30th of June as well called Fairy Fencer F Refrain Chord. Now, this is going to be the third title in the Fairy Fencer F series. And it is actually a really good JRPG series, to be honest. So the two previous games I do actually have videos for. I'm not quite sure if they're on this channel or if they're on my old channel. But it is your traditional JRPG, you know? Like, the combat is fluid, it is fun, the story is amazing, kind of dark at some points, to be honest. You've got multiple endings in the game, you can customize your characters however you want. You've got basically everything that makes a JRPG. Now, one of the things to note about Refrain Chord, however, is this is going to be a little bit different to the previous two titles. So, the gameplay for Refrain Chord is actually now moving to a tactical-based gameplay. So, think along the lines of Disgaea, Final Fantasy Tactics, Agarest, you know, stuff like that. The gameplay is moving along to that style. So I can't really say if the gameplay is going to be good or not, as, you know, this would be their real first attempt at it. I mean, I know they did, you know, Hyper Devotion War and stuff like that, but we're gonna have to see. Either way, just for the story alone, I would suggest picking this up. The Fairy Fencer F games are incredibly fun. And to be fair, the prices drop very quickly just because it is such a niche title and not many people know about them. So even if you don't pick it up on release day, give it like 2 or 3 months and the price will drastically drop. So you could pick it up at like half the price pretty easily, to be fair. I would definitely strongly suggest picking it up though. It would be a fun game. I hate this a lot. I nearly said the name. Alexa. Mute. Echo. Mute. Yeah, so I've got 2. I've got the dot and the normal show. Keep popping up, man. Keep popping up. Right, anyway, with that said, let's move on to the 5th and final game of this list, shall we? One that I am playing right now, but also that doesn't have a UK or American release date. You've guessed it. It is Disgaea 7. Now, a lot of people were unhappy with Disgaea 6. I'm not sure why. I found it pretty enjoyable, to be honest, but you know, it is what it is. The good news for those who did not like 6 is Disgaea 7 is actually taking itself back to the Disgaea 5 timeline. Obviously, right now, we do only have the demo to really compare. However, with all the trailers and information released about D7 and then the actual stuff I've experienced myself on the Japanese demo, it is definitely a lot like D5, only with further quality of life improvements. Auto Battle is now its own separate little feature that is unlocked way later, and you have to get an item to even use it. So there are consumable items specifically for Auto Battle, so it will be a limited resource, okay? There is only 3 ways to get this item. Quest rewards, mission rewards, and you can get 1 from the hospital rewards, okay? So straight off the bat, these items are not going to be easy to farm. Okay, they are going to take a bit of time, so you will not be using Auto Battle all the time. Other than that, the Auto Battle is used with online PvP. That's right, online PvP is back. You are basically set to set up a team, along with, you know, the demonic intelligence system and all that, and then your team will fight against other teams. We don't know about rewards for that system or anything like that. We've only really seen that in trailers. But in terms of everything else, the gameplay, it is very much identical to Disgaea 5. You know, the max level cap is back to 9,999. You are not at millions of stats early on or anything like that. So for long-time lovers of Disgaea, 7 is a return to the roots. Okay, so make sure you pick that one up. Unfortunately, we don't have an English release date just yet. Now, we can go off past precedents here. So whenever a Disgaea comes out in Japan, the English, or should I say the Western release, is always between 6 and 9 months later. Okay, so we could be looking at anywhere around July, September, August, you know, somewhere around that range, okay, for a Western release. But that is only an educated guess. Okay, that is only an educated guess, so do keep that in mind. It might be later, might be sooner, we don't know. That is just a guess on the actual release date. But either way, when it does release, you're going to want to check it out for sure. I'm having tons of fun, even though I can't really understand anything on the Japanese demo. It is what it is. Anyway though, guys, that is going to be it for my top 5 list of JRPGs which you need to check out this year. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there something you think I should have included in this list? If there is, let me know down below in the comments. And while you're down there, smash that like button. As always though, everybody, I really do hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.